In 1982, Steve Trokel at Columbia University was impressed by the magical nature in which the YAG laser could cut through the posterior capsule. This motivated him to experiment with different types of lasers to reshape the eye. He invited John Taboda, an expert on ocular damage for the military, to write a chapter. Taboda observed that the excimer laser left a dent on the corneal epithelium, and a half an hour later the corneal epithelium would refill. This observation suggested to Trokel that this laser produced no collateral ocular damage. In early 1983, Trokel was introduced to Dr. Srinivasan, a photochemist working at IBM. He used the 193 nanometer excimer fluoride laser to etch microprocessors. Dr. Srinivasan demonstrated to Trokel how the excimer could remove organic tissue without causing collateral thermal damage, a process he called photoablative decomposition. This convinced Trokel to experiment with some animal corneas. In 1983, Trokel and Srinivasan published their first article in the American Journal of Ophthalmology, suggesting the use of the excimer laser for refractive corneal surgery. Because IBM did not allow animal research, Trokel leased an excimer laser from Lambda Physics, which he put at Columbia to commence animal experiments. When Ron Kruger, still a medical student, read Trokel's work, he contacted him.
Our early experiments, most of it was in cow eyes. We started doing some rabbits. The rabbit experiments were mostly for healing, to see if there would be haze in the post-operative period.
With John Marshall in England, Trokel and Kruger did a series of rabbit histopathological studies. These studies showed the smoothness and the optical clarity, as well as the lack of thermal damage, that was unique to the 193 nanometer excimer laser. In 1984, Trokel performed circular ablations on rabbit corneas at the suggestion of Charles Munnerlyn, a laser design engineer. In 1985, Munnerlyn provided the formulae for accurately relating the amount of tissue to be removed to induce refractive change. This was the beginning of the development of a procedure we know today as photorefractive keratectomy. The early animal work leading to the development of PRK was done by Marguerite MacDonald, working with Herbert Kaufman at LSU University.
Well, after Trokel wrote his classic paper in '83, I contacted him. I had access to rabbits and monkeys. He also contacted Charles Munnerlyn, and the three of us began working together.
Other animal work was also done by Roger Steinert and Carmen Pulifido at Harvard. George Waring, Khalil Hanna, and Yves Pourlequin in France also contributed to some of the early animal work. Theo Seiler, working at the Freie University in Berlin, performed the first human excimer laser procedure, in which he demonstrated that a corneal scar could be removed and you would still obtain optical clarity. This led to future PRK and PTK applications. By the middle of 1985, Seiler recognized that a refractive application could be tried. The very first application was done to correct astigmatism. He created these laser arc T relaxing incisions in patients and reduced a high degree of astigmatism. The first prototype excimer laser for use in the human eye were designed to make slits on the cornea to simulate radial keratotomy. The thought was that the excimer laser would work better than a diamond knife. Unfortunately, this was not the case. Charles Munnerlyn, building on the concept of central ablation, designed the laser, which became the first prototype Vizx laser. Marguerite MacDonald worked with his first prototype Vizx laser. She performed the first shaped PRK on a human eye in 1988 on a lady whose cornea was about to be enucleated for malignant melanoma.
The first PRK on a sighted eye was Alberta Cassidy, a nice middle-class lady, about 60. One day, she had a small black spot on her conjunctiva that grew very quickly, and to make a long story short, she found that even though she had bilateral 20/20 vision, she was going to need an exenteration. But in the middle of all her grief, she asked if somebody would like to do an experiment on the eye that was about to be removed en bloc with the specimen. We took this poor woman with basically a death sentence past all these monkey cages, laid her down under the laser, and treated her there. So after the surgery, we got the specimen which showed beautiful epithelial healing, missing Bowman's membrane in the center of the cornea, and a beautifully clear cornea.
Following the first excimer PRK on a normally sighted eye, Phase 1 FDA studies were done at LSU, first on 9 blind eyes and then on 10 sighted eyes. In 1990, Phase 2B studies were commenced with 80 patients. This was expanded in 1991 to 2,100 patients in the Phase 3 studies.
Roger Steinert and I made the presentation to the ophthalmic devices panel. This led to the first approval of commercial excimer laser refractive surgery in the United States.
Following these clinical trials, PRK was approved for the Summit device in 1995 and shortly thereafter for Vizix.
Well, the trial started in 1990, and in 1995 it was finally approved, and everybody got excited because we knew this was the future of refractive surgery. When we started the journal, we were looking for new material, and certainly one of the most exciting new ideas to come along in refractive surgery was the excimer laser.
Since 1985, the Journal of Refractive Surgery has been publishing articles about excimer laser vision correction. In fact, as early as 1988, Fran Lesperance published one of the early human reports.
The excimer laser evolved primarily for surface surgery, but then the development of LASIK came in 2 different ways. One approach by Baratta was to take that disc of tissue and use the excimer laser to change the curvature of the posterior part of the flap and then place that back on the cornea. Yanni Polikaris in Greece took it the other direction and used the excimer laser to remove a lenticular disc of tissue from the posterior stroma. And by placing the new cornea on top of that, it assumed the new curvature, and LASIK was then born in 1990. The evolution of LASIK in the United States took a jump forward when Steve Slade decided to use the automated corneal shaper to create a flap and then to treat the posterior stroma with the excimer laser, and he dubbed this flap and zap. Subsequent modifications were done by Steve Brent, then in New Orleans, by El Maghrabi and co-workers in Saudi Arabia. The first clinical study through an IDE was performed at Emory University.
One of the most important developments along with the excimer laser was computer-assisted video keratography. Steve Kleist published the first paper on color-coded video keratography.
So I'm sitting at a luncheon, someone asked Dick Lindstrom, how would you like to see the cornea? And Dick said, well, I don't know, I'd like to see it in living color. I walked around the art shops in the French Quarter, and then I hit upon the color-coded contour map.
After the introduction of video keratography, Yaron Rabinowitz played a huge role in teaching us how to early detect keratoconus. With Steve Wilson and Steve Kleist, he wrote one of the first textbooks on corneal topography. He wrote the first article warning about the dangers of performing LASIK on form-fruit keratoconus. Recently, with other colleagues, Yaron published guidelines to prevent ectasia after LASIK, and no doubt prevented the occurrence of many cases of ectasia.
As excimer laser vision correction became popular, many patients, even though they had 20/20 vision, complained of night glare. This led to the development of wavefront technology.
Well, the whole idea of wavefront was the beginning of scanning spot lasers and tracking systems that could deliver the spots to accurate places in the cornea that really allowed us to say, can we customize the way that we put our spot pattern down? And ocular wavefront sensing with wavefront devices being used was really the way that we could measure exactly how to treat the eye in a wavefront customized way. Theo Seiler was the first really to do a wavefront guided customized treatment in July of '99, and then Marguerite McDonald did that back in October of '99.
The first FDA approval of wavefront customized LASIK was in 2002. This was followed by the approval of multiple platforms with market penetration of more than 50% of cases in the USA. From Trokel's initial observation of Tabota's work and his subsequent animal experiments 25 years ago, excimer laser vision correction has become the most popular elective procedure in the world. Excimer laser vision correction has evolved into a remarkable technology that continues to improve and transform the lives of millions of individuals throughout the world.